So if you're thinking about with your employer hat on and you go, I've taken a deep dive, we looked at all the data, we see that the cost benefit risk is just not, it doesn't play out, and we're not going to put, one of these programs on for our employees. How would you talk to other employers that are considering it, just from the research you've done and the way you guys have looked at this?
Yeah, Colette, I think it's important for an employer to look at all components when we think about implications, right? First and foremost, when we think about the financial implications, it may appear on the surface with the pitch from a PBM that employer might have an opportunity to save based on their size. It could be a fairly significant amount of money on an annual basis by implementing a copay accumulator program. But I would say the short of it, without full transparency, I would ask the employer to dive deep into understanding why do these copay accumulator programs exist? What is in it for the PBM? What is in it for the PBM's third-party entity partner that is quarterbacking these programs from a financial basis? What's in it for the employer? So if you might save a few bucks on an annual basis, and it could be meaningful, I tend to view everything with the patient experience, the employee member experience as core to all we do. Everything should begin and end with that patient member employee experience. So if we're potentially negatively impacting them, what are we going to experience over a longitudinal period of time? I would imagine that if we do see an impact, a negative impact to medication adherence, it's a balloon squeeze analogy where medical claims are going to increase over time because the individuals in need of high-cost medications that are no longer taking them because they abandoned them due to the cost are likely to face some form of other healthcare claims that will pop up, and typically it'll flow through the medical channel, right? So there's unintended consequences, which I think is core. I think the other interesting observation just in the last year, but more recently we've seen an acceleration in the last 2 to 3 months, is we've seen roughly 8 to 9 states plus Puerto Rico pass legislation at the state level banning copay accumulator programs. So ask yourself, why are they doing that? And think about the implications as I would expect over time we'll likely see based on this momentum, more and more states in the future potentially passing legislation that will ban copay accumulator programs as well. When we think from the employer perspective as well, how would you even implement a copay accumulator program? There's a great range of risks and uncertainty, and I would say it's not a low lift or a no lift process. Oftentimes we will see, I would say, the program itself has to get structured in a way that accounts for all communications to educate and inform your members about why you're turning this program on, what it means to that employee, and what are the implications. And it's very complex when we think about benefits in general. Benefits are very complex and overwhelming to most people to begin with. So when you try to approach something like this to help your people that are in need of these high cost medications that may be eligible for this financial assistance and copay assistance cards directly from the pharmaceutical manufacturers, I would expect that there will be noise from the employees that are no longer going to be able to take advantage of these programs. And more importantly, when we think about the summary plan descriptions and the summary material modifications, there inevitably will need to be some adjustments made in regards to the SPDs and the SMM's language around these programs and the implications to the pharmacy benefit as well. So it's not an easy lift by any means when we think about the work to be done to turn this on. But, it all goes back to, at the end of the day, what is the impact to your people? And I would contend it is optimal when we can deliver top quality health benefits for the lowest net cost possible with the patient experience in mind. And when we look at some of these programs that exist in the marketplace, there's clearly some opportunities for the employers, I would say, to challenge and, perhaps not blindly trust what they might be pitched from a vendor or, from a benefit consultant or broker, but really dive in to fully understand all the implications that will materialize over time. But I tend to take a long view on this, and my concern from day one has been if we see study after study representing that there will be a negative impact with the medication adherence, that's not really doing us any good when we look at the overall total cost of care. There's one other point that I'd close out with, and Dr. Adam Fine from Pembroke Consulting and Drug Channel's blog fame posted a blog Thursday, May 21st, 2020. And it was very insightful. I suggest everyone take a look at it if you have an interest in learning more. But the topic was, why do CVS and Express Scripts rely on secretive private companies to run their copay maximizer programs? And it goes in deep about copay maximizer and copay accumulator programs, what they are, what the structure is today based on the limited amount of information and intel that's available publicly. But there's been very interesting insights relative to some of that financial flow that is happening through these third-party entities working in concert with the PBM. So that would be another point of interest that I think would be informative for decision makers within employers to also take a look from that perspective too. So you have unintended consequences to the patient. You have legislative momentum in various states in recent months and likely more to come in the future. You have technical changes within the employer's plan benefits, SPDs, SMMs that you need to account for. You have communications that you're going to need to orchestrate with your members to help them understand why you're implementing it, what it means to them, and what are the implications financially to them. Not easy. And then lastly, we continue to see study after study and article after article produce some of the negative unintended consequences that are materializing with these programs. And I think that's all very important to have a full view into the decision-making process as to go or no go with a program such as this.